Okay, I just finished the first video, and I'm going to go to the second part right now. I'm going to talk about why God allows it and our part in that. And I'm just going to read some scriptures. This is the second part of 2 Thessalonians 2:10 through 12. And this is basically, and with all of this deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause, God shall send them a strong delusion. It says God will send them a delusion. He allows it. That they should believe a lie. That they all might be damned who believe not in the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. And I'm going to read a few more verses. This is Isaiah 66:4. This is just to confirm it. This is God speaking. I also will choose their delusions, and will bring fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spoke, they did not hear. But they did evil before my eyes, and chose that which I delighted not. This is Romans 1:21-24. But that when they knew God, and glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their own imaginations, and their foolish heart became darkened. Wherefore God also gave them up unto uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts. And this is the last one, Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. And this is the Lord speaking. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So it's Satan's mystery of iniquity. But make no mistake about it, God has given him permission. Just like in the book of Job when Satan went after Job. It was Satan that went after Job, but God allowed it for his purposes. Okay? And a lot of people get confused. They don't understand. And what needs to, the verses that hopefully you got it, but the verses I just read to you point out very clearly that these things are coming upon humanity. Delusions leading to deception, which will lead to judgment. And delusions are basically like if someone does a magic trick, it's like a delusion. Okay? You swallow enough delusions, you will become deceived. Deception doesn't happen immediately, but delusions are forthcoming. They're happening all the time. So you swallow enough delusions, you will end up in a deceived state. If you end up in a deceived state and some things don't happen to bust you out of that, okay, mostly God, then you're going to end up in God's judgment, and he'll judge you there, okay? It's like a trap. If you want to catch a mouse, you don't go hunt them. You'll just set a trap and put some cheese on there, and you'll come back a month later, and that mouse will be dead. You know, God is a wise God. He doesn't work the way we think he's going to work. He doesn't do things the way that we think he should do them. He does them his way. And what God has prescribed for people who are making a choice to ignore the truth, who are making a choice to ignore their conscience, and that's a biggie. God has given mankind a conscience for us to listen to it. And there are so many people who literally turn it off. They switch it off and they say, I don't need that. It doesn't help me make money. It doesn't help me get success. It doesn't help me with my goals. So I'll just turn that off. Well, you're guilty of these verses if you do that. Because the Bible is very clear. Because they received not the love of the truth. Okay? The love of the truth. God gave you a conscience because he loves you. He wants to help you. He wants to show you what's right and what's wrong. And he wants to speak to your spirit, speak to your inner man, and show you this is what is good, this is what is right. And so God's love gave you that conscience. Now if you decide to turn it off because that's what you decide, you have not received the love of God's truth. You've taken a mechanism God has given you to greatly help you spiritually on this planet, and you switched it off, saying, no thanks God, I don't need it. You're guilty of that verse. You're guilty of 2 Thessalonians 2:10 through 12. And if we ignore our conscience, or if we ignore factors in our lives that God has permitted and allowed to wake us up and to help us to see the truth. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's a certain witness in your life. Maybe it's the fact that when you were a kid you went to church for 5 years and you do remember what was preached. There's so many avenues God can use to minister truth and to help you to understand the truth. And he uses people a lot, but sometimes he'll use your conscience directly. If you ignore that, and if you're not going to listen and you're going to play games, and you need to listen to what I'm going to tell you, because this is why I'm making this video. If you ignore those things, don't think a stove is going to fall on your head. That's not how God works. Delusions will come into your life. And as you swallow those delusions, you will become deceived. And once you're deceived, you're in a horrible place. Because if God judges you there, it's all over. It's all over. And God's going to speak this verse to you. God, how come I fell into deception and you judged me there? Because you did not receive the love of the truth. You turned off your conscience. Everybody I've sent your way, you ignored them. You played games with me. So, and then in that place you're going to say, well, God, even though I did all those things, how come you didn't stop the delusions? How come you didn't stop me from swallowing them? God's going to say, what are you talking about? That's the way it works. You think God's going to do something that's unnatural? That's God's process. It's like saying, if I jump out a 10-story window, how come I broke my legs? Because gravity is not going to hold me up. I'm going to fall and break my legs. And that's the way things work. If you ignore the truth and you switch off your conscience and you play games with God and you play games with everything that man and God does to try to help you, and you play games with all those things and you start to call good evil and you start to call evil good, then that's the choice you've made. There's repercussions to that. And guess what? Satan's going to see. He's going to watch. He's going to say, I like how this guy operates. And he's going to go after you. And God's not going to stop it. And he's going to feed you delusions. He's going to spoon feed them to you. And you're going to eat them. And you're going to end up deceived. That's your judgment on yourself. God didn't do it to you. And God's not going to stop it. That's why he's given you a conscience. That's why he's given you the truth. That's why he's given you people in your life to help you and to try to speak some sense into you. God uses police officers. God uses a jail cell. God uses hospitals. God uses sickness. He uses almost everything to humble us so that we will do what's right. And if we ignore all those things, there's a judgment that will follow. And God's designed it like that. So you're not going to be able to say, well, why'd you allow the delusions? God's going to say, well, when you ignore the truth, the other thing's going to come in. That's what you've chosen. You can't ignore the truth. And if you do, the other side, Satan, in his mystery of iniquity, it's going to come in like a flood. It's going to be like, yeah, man, I like how he turned off his conscience. I like that. I'm going to start feeding this guy. And once you start getting fed with delusions, it's just a matter of time. Okay? So God has allowed that to basically happen in that manner. It's his will. And what delusions do is they put you in a state where you're not going to really be able to see. The more delusions you swallow, the more you can't see. You can't see. And that's going to lead you into certain lifestyle choices and certain frames of mind, and by hanging out with the wrong crowd and by making the wrong choices. And it's going to maybe lead you away from your family, or it's going to lead you in places where you're making a lot of risks and you're just not doing things correctly. Okay? And that's the way it works, and that's God's judgment. That's how he's decreed it. God judges us through delusions. Just like I read, it says that he will, in Isaiah 66, verse 4, I also will choose their delusions. Okay? And God uses Satan, because God doesn't deceive people and a lot. God will send a delusion, but guess who's the head of that delusion? It's not God, it's Satan. He uses Satan. He uses him like a guard dog, or like something that he would use. He uses him for his purposes. But that's the way that God has engineered it.